All right, everybody. It's a mission in politics. There's so many people who God calls them to do something super difficult, maybe something that does not make them popular at some point in time in their lives, but they do it, and they do it because God called them to do it. And Mike, I believe what you are doing here is so difficult and
Yeah.
sometimes unpopular in different places and popular in other places. But either way, it is hard because I've watched you go and get shadow banned on
Hmm.
Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, and then you got to work your way through that and then get back into where you want to be again. But Mike has been building this thing with Tom Touchstone in the very beginning. It's called 511 Media, if you don't know about it. But Mike, before we get into all of that, tell the people watching, what are you most thankful for and what's hard right now?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And it looks like we got some people on your Instagram, dude.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
shout out
Caleb,
to all you guys out there. What's up?
Dakota, I see you guys. Chris.
That's some friends, huh?
Yeah.
Right on. Right on. Thanks for watching. Thankful for it. So I would say I'm going to give you two answers for that one because when the first time I heard you ask the question, I was like, well, thankful overall. So I'm always going to say this, but number one thing I'm most thankful for in my life is my wife. But be after God, of course.
Get those
after
brownie
after
points.
after our Lord and Savior is my beautiful bride Ludavia, who you and Jennifer both know.
Yeah.
And we happen to have your beautiful bride in here in the studio with
Yeah,
you.
she's over there. I'm trying
She's
to
trying
stay
to hide.
focused. I'm trying to stay focused.
I know, right? So that's number one. But more focused down to like this week would be just getting some good family time over the weekend.
Oh,
It's
that's
kind of
awesome.
cool because God's given me the opportunity. Like during the week, like it's hardcore. Like I start my days at like 3 a.m. and like I go a lot of times to like 8 p.m.
Whew.
Yeah, but I know you got that kind of stamina too, and you do it. I know you do, and you do it outside. But
Yeah.
uh, I make a point the weekends are family time. So we had birthday parties this weekend.
Yeah.
My oldest had his 11th birthday. It was Friday was his birthday. Saturday was the party. We had my parents over. My brother was there. Then Sunday he went to another friend's birthday, and so we just took that time and took our other two and did some stuff with them. So
That's cool. So
yeah.
what's hard? You know, everybody usually has an answer right away for what are you most thankful for right now, even when you ask your friends out there. But what's something that's difficult for you?
Well, as you asked me that question, thank you for giving me time to prep for it, to think
Yeah.
about it a little bit. If any of you guys ever come on the show, he gives you a little bit of an opportunity.
Yeah. I warned
a
you.
little bit of grace. Yeah. But I'm good on the spot too, you know.
Yeah. You are.
But what's hard, I think for me, and it's kind of interesting because as I was thinking about the answer to that question, I think that the things that God calls us to do, we can do hard things and they're not hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, I have this morning show we do every morning, 7 to 8 a.m.
That's why he gets up at 3.
and it takes a lot of time to prep for it.
Yeah.
And we have a full team that works on that show every single day. So I get up at 3 most days, or 3:30 if I'm sleeping in, and we start working. And a lot of times, like I said earlier, I go till like 8 p.m.
Ooh.
and that I think most people would consider it hard.
Yeah.
But I know I'm doing exactly what God wants me to do.
Yeah.
And so he gives you the strength, and it's not hard when you know you're right in the middle of God's will.
That's awesome. So check this out. I know a lot of people. So I am a pastor, and I work really hard to stay out of the political stuff, right? Mike Harvey does the exact opposite of that. Yeah. And you jump all in. And I remember we went to this men's retreat, and we were staying in an Airbnb. And I remember watching God going like sometimes God will show me that somebody is about to do something really hard that he wants them to do. Right. Yeah. And I'm just like, all right. And God's like, have the conversation with Mike Harvey about this, because he's going all in and he needs to understand how hard it's going to be. And I remember we sat on the couch and I just looked at you and I go, do you know what you're doing? Remember that?
Oh, I remember it very clearly. I remember being on the balcony and walking. I could picture the room right now.
Yeah. And it was crazy because I was like, like I said, I do my best to stay out of the political realm in that sense. And it's just not my calling, but I could see it on you.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is his calling. I was like, that's a rough calling. It's for me, it is because it's not my calling.
Yeah.
But do you tell them what you thought about that night? Because it was an interesting conversation.
Well, I thank you for being a brother. By the way, I'll tell you again, I love you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
you have always been there and poured into my life, and I appreciate it. But I remember sitting there, and as you're telling me that, that's not the only time that I remember you telling me some things. I was like, well, I don't think it's going to be hard because I know it's what God's calling me to do. And that's, again, you asked me that question today, and what's hard for one person is easy for another person, and what's hard for you as an individual is easy for God.
That's good. That's good, Mike. So after I tell him this about getting in the political realm, I also give him some big news, and I say, just so you know, Mike, I am not getting in the political stuff. And he's all, I fully understand. And it was kind of like a test for our friendship, like, are you going to be okay with me not jumping in the political scene and talking about politics? And I remember you and Tom Touchstone both said, that's fine.
Yeah, that's not your calling.
Yeah, that's all right. I think,
how dare me try to pull you out of your calling?
Yeah, and I think you do have to, like, because some people do get upset if you're a Christian and you're not a Republican, or you're not like stating who you're going to vote for. But I think there are people who are called to do that. Just like on social media, I'm called to preach the gospel, to live this life that God calls me to live, right? But I also believe there are people out there who are called to share those Christian values in a very strong way. And I think that's you.
Yeah.
And you've stuck with it. And 511 Media has grown because of it. And even,
well, I've had people ask me, well, you get a lot of hate on social media. You get people saying this or saying that. We've been, as you know, we've been taken off platforms. We've been shadow banned multiple times. All these things are like, how do you deal with it? I was like, it doesn't even faze me. In fact, I think it just makes me stronger because, like, I was like, if somebody's getting triggered over something, or if social media especially is getting triggered over something, I know that we're doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the opposition is important, because listen, if you say you're really doing what God called you to do and you have no opposition, you are probably not doing what God called you to do.
Yeah.
Or at least
God never called us to live an easy life.
Yeah. Or you're not even doing it all the way like God told you, and sometimes the opposition just reminds you, it's like a confirmation, that you are doing the right thing. I mean, I don't know why it's probably
like fuel for me.
Yeah. Somebody's probably watching this, but listen, even in your marriage, if there is no opposition in your marriage, if there is no strife at all, you're probably not in a very deep relationship with that other person.
That's funny. I remember having a conversation with our friend Josh about that.
Yeah.
This was a long time ago, before either of us were married. And they're like, and he told me, he's like, if you're in a relationship and there's not like some source of conflict or something, then there's probably no passion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Because even me and Josh, we've had our little bouts, and I remember him going.
Well, he told me I'm the only friend he's punched in the face twice.
And we're talking about Josh Vietti. He can punch, all right. He hasn't punched me, but
no, I'm probably the only friend he's ever punched.
You must be
and I deserved it.
That's awesome. But listen, that conflict though, sometimes, like, we had a little bit of a conflict going on, and it kind of helped our relationship because it made clear who we were in that conflict. And I think that's what it does when you have the conflict in your calling. And a lot of people, if you don't know what your calling is, start finding it out. I've been having a lot of conversations with men lately. Like this one guy, he broke both of his arms and he could have bled out, right? And I just go like, yeah, but God saved your life, right? And he's like, yeah, there's no other way I could have. And I just go like, for what though? And then another guy, he just got severely ill. he had bleeding inside his GI and all this stuff. And I just go, you could have died. And he goes, yeah. And I go, well, why are you still alive? And that question, if you start thinking about that, praying about that and seeking it, you will find your true calling.
Well, I've had, and I know you, guarantee you have, and I don't know that I know because we've had a conversation, but I know because I know you. People have asked me many times, how do you find your calling? I know they've probably asked you, and I want to hear your answer. I want to give my answer first.
Yeah.
So when people ask me, I kind of tell them two different things. First of all, you don't find your calling finds you when you're in the middle of serving God.
I like that.
And number two is your immediate calling is just whatever God's putting in front of you.
Yes. Yeah. That, I think you're spot on. I don't even need to respond to that one. That is the exact answer. Like usually your calling is very close. Some people think it's like you got to go through the gauntlet to find your calling, but usually it's right in front of you already.
Yeah. And that calling evolves. Like it starts here and God knows what's over here, but it starts here and it goes over to here,
Yeah.
It's a journey.
So the audience, if you don't know, when I say 511 Media, I'm talking about this podcast. He started with Pastor Tom Touchstone in doing a podcast called Lunch Break. And a lot of people were a part of that. Justin Greer, myself, Johnny, Josh,
Seth.
Vince, Seth. And it just kept growing. And then came this point where everything changed and you had to take it on with Pastor Tom and just go, okay, this is our baby from now on.
Yeah.
And that was a huge, and if you want to watch our special on that, it was our 2nd year anniversary. And we talk about that whole story, but then you take it on, you keep growing, you keep building it. And where are you now with 511 Media?
Well, it's crazy because when we first started doing that, like, we're just like, oh, we're doing this thing at the church,
Yeah.
And now like God's turned it into a full, it's a for-profit business, but really it's a ministry.
Yeah.
Because I know that, it's not just a calling for me to, see how famous I can be. Because at the end of the day, like, that's not even what I like. I don't care to be famous. If that's what is required for me to fulfill the mission, sure, I'll do it. But it's not, that's not the end. It's a means to an end,
Yeah.
But so, we have this motto that we elevate voices that matter, and we lift other people's voices. We want to make other people's voices loud, including yours, Adrian.
That's awesome.
And at the end of the day, it's all about spreading the gospel and advancing the kingdom. But we have several shows that we do. My morning show we do every single day for an hour. And
what kind of things do you talk about on your show?
On my show, usually it's current events, political, but we also get into some sports.
Okay.
Usually, like Title IX, we'll talk about that. That's sports related, but Title IX was where the Supreme Court overruled men being in women's sports.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about pop culture. We did an episode on Disney the other day. We talk about relevant stuff that matters. We'll get into some music and stuff like that, especially, we know a lot of musicians.
Yeah.
But really it's for faith, family, freedom, conservative values from a godly perspective.
Okay. And that's good. And so with that, you heard the word conservative. So you already know we're about to go into a little bit of politics, but I know in this part, you've done a really good job because you've managed to keep your hands clean in the middle of political conversations. And I want you to kind of share with the audience, because, if you post an American flag in this day, you might get some backlash because of your flag. If you post that you and your family pray at dinner time, they might be, oh, you're a bunch of Bible thumpers, But how have you kept your hands clean in the midst of people saying things like you're a Trumper, you're a right-wing, extremist because you pray and all that? How have you kept your hands clean in the middle of that?
So define that when you say keep your hands clean. What do you mean?
What I mean is, like, it would be easy to get dirty by jumping in the same direction they're jumping in. You know what I mean? Because I think culture wants division.
Mm-hmm.
And by being divisive and causing even more division, we get our hands dirty,
Right.
you know. And you've done a good job of not getting your hands dirty. I've watched you go from talking about Biden and then saying we got to still pray for this guy. We still need to lift up our country. I mean, that keeps your hands very clean.
Yeah.
So
Well, so at the end of the day, I'm going to stand up for what's right, regardless. So no one's going to say, oh, well, you know, I can convince you that abortion's okay. No, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. Transgender issues, stuff like that. But I also know that we need to approach these people in love. And the other thing, and I thought about this recently. When I was younger, when I was in grade school, I got picked on a lot, made fun of, called names, and everything else. And I think God used it to give me thicker skin.
okay.
And so now, like, people call me names. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you want to call me a white Christian nationalist? Okay, cool. Because I'm white, I'm Christian, and I love my country.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to go name slinging back at them, because at the end of the day, that's not going to be productive.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. I think too, like, you got to guard, because the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy.
Yeah.
And like, God comes to build his kingdom, and he comes to bring people to a place they've never been.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you introduce, like, we'll go into an easy point of like abortion, right? Like, when you jump into that in the Christian realm, in churches, there are still in churches divisions. Some people believe it's okay. Some people believe it's not okay. And to love them both, you have to stand on what God has called you to say.
Right. And at the end of the day, like, and Pastor Ron did a great job addressing that particular topic just a couple weeks ago.
He did.
He did. Understand, people have had abortions.
Yeah.
Does that mean they're going to hell? No. Does that mean they're a bad person? No. That means if they're a Christian and they're living a godly life, they want to walk by the Bible, they made a mistake.
Right? Yeah. I think that's how you keep your hands clean, is that you don't jump on the bandwagon of putting them in a box too. I mean, because even the people that I'm friends with, not everybody is going to vote for who I vote for. Not everybody's going to believe what I believe, but I still don't change what God has called me to do, you know, in that sense. And I think that has helped in a big way what you're doing too.
Well, the Bible says, hate the sin, love the sinner, right?
Yeah.
So, and I also recognize, and this is the part where it's kind of a fine line, because I'm like, okay, well, on one hand, we're conservative, on the other hand, we're Christian, and those don't always go together, right?
Yeah.
When I say they don't always go together, most of the time the values align, but the rhetoric doesn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So how do you approach that? And first of all, tell me if you disagree, Adrian. I'm just having a conversation.
Oh, I will tell you if I disagree. 100%.
But if someone isn't a Christian, my laws don't even apply to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and also, like, we were having a conversation about people who smoke weed and call themselves Christians, right?
Yeah.
And I think that even in the political realm, you can get to where, like, oh, you're a Democrat? How can you be a Christian? You know, and it's like, you got to be careful, because there's a lot of Christians that smoke weed.
Right.
And I don't sit there and go like, well,
it's not our job to get them clean. It's God's job to get them clean.
Yeah.
Right?
I think the main focus for me when I see that is going like, well, how close are you to God? You know, I don't focus on the weed necessarily, because I know
that's an external factor.
Yeah. And if I focus on that, I'm not going to get them any closer to God.
What's that? I probably a pastor said this somewhere along the way, but I don't remember to give attribution. But it's an external symptom of an internal condition.
Yeah, exactly. Greg Laurie says that. Greg Laurie says it. All right, so we're at the end of the show. We're trying to wrap this up. But if you guys want to hear a conservative value show, and you want to hear about what current events are happening with a conservative value perspective, Mike Harvey does a great job of doing that in the mornings every single day on 511 Media. But also tell them you got some things that are coming up, some events that you are going to. You have a new show coming up.
Yeah, so we got show it. So these are somewhat related. So we got Blexit Night of Faith in Philadelphia,
Okay.
Pennsylvania, coming up on 14th of September. We're going to be out there filming, doing some stuff, and the director of Blexit, Pierre Wilson.
Okay.
We're going to be starting a podcast with him that's separate from Blexit 501c3. You got to kind of keep the pots separate because
Okay.
you probably know a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
about this stuff. So Blexit in itself is really all about freeing people from the bondage of sin, bondage of drugs, bondage of gangs, and all this stuff. Right? It's not, hey, let's get all the black people to be Republicans. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about meeting people where they're at and just serving their needs and letting God work on them.
Hmm.
Right. So, and it's very much a Christian thing. It was actually started by Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum.
Okay.
But Pierre runs it. Pierre is the director of Blexit.
Wow.
And
that's
now
a
they're
big
backed
thing.
by Turning Point USA. So they got some muscle behind them too. And so they're putting on this event, Night of Faith in Philadelphia, and they're going to have several pastors speak. They're going to have pastor roundtable. We're going to be involved in all this stuff. And then,
Wow.
but Pierre, we're going to be starting a podcast with him, and we were just having a conversation about that today. We don't have an official date yet, but we're expecting sometime around the end of September, probably.
Well, that is big news. Also, I just want to remind you guys that M24 is coming up September 7th
I'll
and
be there.
8th. A bunch of guys are going to be there. I will be the speaker on Sunday. Pastor Will Gutierrez is going to be the speaker on Saturday. It is going to be a powerful
be lit.
event. But also, the next time we record this podcast, I will be returning from Costa Rica. So I'm going to bring the guys, Collins, Ryan Johnson, and Ryan Stendrup are going to go with us to Costa Rica. Collins, it's actually his fault that I'm going. He's the one who pulled me in on this. But we'll do a report and share with you guys what God had us do in Costa Rica.
Dude, that's tight. We should set up like a kind of more loungy seat.
Oh yeah,
setup
it's
for
gonna
that.
be awesome.
It'd be
like
fun. Yeah.
Pastor James prayed for us yesterday
Okay.
at the Sunday service, and I know that we're gonna do something that's gonna be special. This is kind of like Collins has pulled the whole team together to get this done. We're doing it with an influencer group from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
So it's going to be fun, and Ryan Stendrup has appointed himself as supervisor of the event. I told him he better be ready to work, but
Right
we'll
on.
see. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate your guys' watch. If you could leave a comment about something that affected you, something that you like, I hope you guys feel inspired and moved to do what God called you to do. You guys have a blessed day.